on, let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US and the European Union have announced an agreement on the framework for reciprocal, fair and balanced trade. The European Union has kept the digital sector out of current talks and aims to lower US car tariffs to 15% retrospectively from the 1st of August. Now, officials say that the joint statement is the first step that could expand to cover more sectors over time. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that Russian President Vladimir Putin is prepared to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. However, he has stated that all issues must be worked through first, and he's also emphasized that there's a question about Zelensky's authority to sign a peace deal. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that he expects a strong US reaction if Russian leader Vladimir Putin refuses a bilateral meeting. He has noted that it is unclear what territorial concessions Moscow might offer, adding that Budapest as a venue for future talks is challenging. Ukrainian officials have stated that a Russian attack killed one person and injured at least 18, striking a US electronics manufacturer in Mukashevo. Authorities report that 15 people have been hurt in a missile strike that destroyed storage facilities, as the region's governor confirmed the plant produced consumer electronics. The Israeli Defense Forces have stated that they've become the first steps of their controversial military assault on Gaza City after calling up tens of thousands of reservists. Now, this comes as the Netanyahu government considers a new ceasefire deal accepted by Hamas to pause nearly 2 years of war. Hamas has responded to the start of Israel's new attack on Gaza City, calling it a blatant disregard for efforts to broker a ceasefire and hostage release deal. Critics inside and outside Israel warn that the new offensive will endanger hostages, displace hundreds of thousands, and worsen an already dire humanitarian crisis. Uganda has signed an agreement with the United States to accept nationals from third countries who fail to gain asylum in America. The deal comes as President Donald Trump pushes to deport millions of illegal immigrants, including sending some to South Sudan and Eswatini. US President Donald Trump's administration has imposed sanctions on 2 judges and 2 prosecutors at the International Criminal Court over the arrest warrant issued for Israeli officials. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called the court a national security threat and an instrument of lawfare against the US and Israel. All right, viewers, those were the headlines, and our top focus is what is transpiring in the Middle East. The head of the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency has voiced concern that children suffering from malnutrition in Gaza will die if emergency provisions are not immediately put in place, especially during Israel's Gaza City military operation. This comes after the Israeli military had stated that they had begun the first steps of a major operation to capture Gaza City. Now, according to reports, troops are holding the outskirts and tens of thousands of reservists have been called up, with full deployment expected to take place sometime in September. The UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini has stated that its data showed a 6-fold increase in the number of children who are suffering from malnutrition in Gaza City, especially since March. Now, let's take a closer look at what exactly the UNRWA Commissioner General had to say.
On a une population qui est extrêmement affaiblie, qui va être confrontée à une nouvelle opération militaire majeure. On pensait qu'on avait déjà tout décrit de Gaza, on avait décrit l'enfer sur terre à Gaza, mais effectivement, si ce scénario devait se mettre en place, même si on parle de l'évacuation des gens de Gaza au sud, beaucoup n'auront même plus la force de pouvoir se déplacer. Avec l'indice de nos centres de santé, nous avons vu entre le mois de mars et aujourd'hui une augmentation par 6 du nombre d'enfants sévèrement malnutris. Sévèrement malnutris, ça signifie que si aujourd'hui aucune disposition n'est prise, ils sont certainement condamnés à mort.
All right, there you've heard what the UNRWA Commissioner General has had to say. Meanwhile, we're now learning that Israeli airstrikes have hit the central Gaza city of Deir al-Balah. This has taken place after the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres had urged an immediate ceasefire. All of this is taking place even as the war continues after 22 months. More than 62,000 Palestinians have lost their lives up until now. We do know that it was the terror attack on the 7th of October in 2023 in which 1,200 Israelis had lost their lives. This is what had ignited this conflict. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has now recalled reservists as well as more than 130,000 troops are all geared up, even as the siege of Gaza has now commenced. You can see those visuals clearly on your screen. The UNRWA has called for immediate action, warning of starvation, warning of famine as well. The head of the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency has stated that children suffering from malnutrition in Gaza will die if emergency provisions are not immediately put in place, especially during Israel's Gaza City military operation. All right, viewers, those were, of course, the latest developments from the Middle East. Meanwhile, we're now shifting focus towards the Russia-Ukraine war. The Ukrainian military has released a drone footage showing that its soldiers have recaptured a village in the Donetsk region. Earlier, Ukraine claimed that it retook control of 6 settlements in the country's eastern Donetsk, where Moscow had also claimed to have made advances. There are reports that claims of active offenses which have resulted in advancement in several locations along Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region, which have come to light. Moscow has meanwhile claimed to have taken control of multiple settlements in the Sumy region, including Yablunivka and Oleksivka. These developments have come across at a time when both Russia and Ukraine are gearing for peace negotiations mediated by the United States of America. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Raymond Vickery. He's the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. It's been quite a power-packed week in Washington. We've seen Zelensky as well as leaders from across NATO countries in a show of strength coming to the Oval Office and meeting Donald Trump as well. The optics of which we've all seen the pictures of. We'd seen earlier, even before that, Trump meeting Putin in Alaska, pushing for trilateral talks. There's been a lot of murmur regarding Budapest being chosen as the location. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, today confirmed that Zelensky is, that Putin is open to meeting Zelensky and in Budapest. Meanwhile, Zelensky has claimed that Budapest is quite the challenging location. So do you think peace talks will fructify?
Well, thanks very much for having me. One hopes that the talks will continue. As Winston Churchill once said, jaw is better than war. However, I don't have great hopes for this because peace, like war, has to be waged. And it requires both a strategy and a coalition to be able to bring about peace. And those conditions really have been shattered by President Trump's approach, of a real estate magnate, if you will, who can get together with a principal, Putin in this case, and Zelensky in a secondary position, and make some sort of real estate-like transaction in which there will be some glory which will be shed upon President Trump. That's just not the way in which to go about it. I am encouraged somewhat by, as you've indicated, ministers from some of the great democracies of Europe getting together to see if there isn't some way that the pressure can be kept upon President Putin. He started this war, he invaded it. He could end it tomorrow simply by going home. Thousands of people are being killed even as we speak because of these hostilities. So it's going to take more than just the kind of photo op which took place in the United States. And it is going to require, in the first instance, a ceasefire, at least to stop the killing. So one is encouraged that people are talking rather than just resorting to violence, but it's going to take more than just talk to convince President Putin that he can't be the new Peter the Great and restore the glories first of the Russian Empire, which was inherited by the USSR. So we hope that there will be both a combination of carrots and sticks, and that President Putin will succumb to that pressure and be diverted from the imperialistic path that he's on right now.
To add to that, I also wanted to ask you what next as far as the territories Ukraine has lost, including Donetsk, areas in Donetsk in particular. Do you think in order to make sure, catalyze a peace deal, would Ukraine have to make some concessions with Russia? Would Trump pressurize Zelensky to do so, or will European leaders as such stand their ground?
Well, I think that there are going to have to be compromises, but those compromises do not necessarily involve simply giving territory to Russia. There are a lot of options in terms of demilitarized zones, in terms of international organizations being able to keep the peace in those areas. Sure, there are going to have to be some adjustments made, but the overriding fact here is the invasion of a sovereign nation by Russia. And it has to, any result which is going to be more than just a pause in hostilities, has to have Putin and Russia receding from that principle that they hold that they have a right to somehow use violence in order to be able to take territory. So sure, there can be adjustments. There can be, as I say, carrots and sticks on both sides, but it's not going to happen just with a kind of photo op or a real estate transaction, which President Trump's approach is now. We've got to get back to a ceasefire. We've got to have a coalition of those who are working for peace, which include the great democracies of the world, in order to be able to restore the kind of order which we've had under the United Nations Charter and has largely kept the peace since World War II.
A quick follow-up to that, Sergei Lavrov has also, while stating that Putin is ready to meet Zelensky, he's questioned Zelensky's authority to sign any peace deal. What's your reaction to this particular statement?
Well, I think it's ironic that Putin, who is responsible for tens of thousands of deaths and has violated the charter provisions of the United Nations and international rule of law against non-aggression, non-imperialism, would be questioning the authority of Zelensky, who was elected, has put off elections because of the Russian occupation of his territory. But this is a typical Russian ploy, if you will, to say, I'm legitimate, but you're not legitimate, and therefore we can't make peace. And it plays really into the hands of Putin if one accepts that. And unfortunately, our president, President Trump, from time to time, has cast his own doubt on legitimacy of Zelensky. This is entirely unproductive, but if the Russian position that I can't do this because of illegitimacy is almost laughable.
All right, I request you to stay on with us because some other crucial developments have taken place in Moscow today. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met Russian President Vladimir Putin hours after he held talks with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. This comes after the Russian foreign minister stated that Russia and India have achieved good results in energy cooperation and Moscow is interested in further joint energy projects with New Delhi. The talks in Moscow take place as India faces 25% additional tariffs over its continued purchase of Russian oil. Still with us on the broadcast is Raymond Vickery. It's been quite a power-packed day for Dr. Jaishankar in Moscow. He's met Vladimir Putin, Russian president, after meeting Sergei Lavrov. What's interesting is, as I pointed out earlier, this has come in the aftermath of the US administration under Trump imposing additional tariffs against India. It also comes ahead of the SCO summit that's going to take place in Shenzhen in China very, very shortly on the 31st of August. What do you make of this growing convergence between India, Russia and China, especially in the aftermath of Donald Trump's recent actions?
Well, it's entirely regrettable that our President Trump has taken the kind of sledgehammer approach to U.S.-India relations, which really has pushed India in a direction which, in my judgment, is not in its own best interest, and that is toward Russia and even toward China, which is the most existential threat immediately to India. The reality is that the India-Russia relationship cannot substitute for the two largest democracies on the world cooperating both economically and in security matters. India and the United States are founded upon certain principles having to do with individual liberty, freedom, rule of law, and these are not in common with Russia or much less with China. And Russia and China are joined at the hip with their no limits partnership, which they have reiterated time and time again. So one would hope that in spite of President Trump, that Minister of External Affairs Jaishankar and others will understand the commonality of interest and values between the West, if you will, and the West defined really in terms of the rights of the individual. It's not a geographical term. It includes Japan, it includes Australia, it includes, of course, Western Europe. But India has much more in common with the West, defined in that regard, than it does with Russia, which shares none of these values and is responsible, as we speak, for the deaths of thousands of people by invading a neighbor. So it is understandable and regrettable that under President Trump's approach, India is being driven in this direction. But if you look at the trade figures, India trade with Russia is very small in terms of Indian exports. India has a trade surplus which is vast and important with the United States. The growth in trade, which has taken place between Russia and India, has been basically taking up the slack in terms of imports of oil, plus the buying of defense products. But one has to look at what benefits the Aam Admi, the common man and woman of India, and that is in terms of being able to export. And Russia is not taking those exports, whether it be in information technology, whether it be in pharmaceuticals, whether it be even in basmati rice. That's just not a substitute. And one hopes that India will be an even stronger part of the coalition for peace, which is necessary to end this war, which has been started and is sustained by Russia.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Meanwhile, viewers, more news coming in. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met Afghan Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani. He is also a member of the Communist Party's political bureau and has stated that China has always pursued a friendly policy towards Afghanistan. It stood for equality among all countries and adhered to non-interference. Wang Yi has stressed that China respects Afghanistan's independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, its development path, national conditions and religious traditions, adding that in Afghanistan's pursuit of development, China is a reliable partner and friend. He has stated that China will continue to oppose pressure and asset freezes on Afghanistan and supports early resumption of bilateral patrols in the Wakhan corridor to maintain border peace. He has urged Afghanistan to act firmly against East Turkestan Islamic movement and other terror groups to safeguard cooperation. Haqqani, meanwhile, thanked China's long-standing support and stated that Afghanistan is ready to deepen ties, address China's security concerns, and never allow its territory to undermine China's security. That is, of course, the latest that we are tracking. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung. He is a strategist who focuses on Chinese security and the economy. He's joining us live from London. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. A very, very interesting development, especially if you consider the geopolitics of South Asia in particular. Wang Yi had just wrapped up his visit to India, where he met the Indian Prime Minister, and then he's now met the Afghan Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani. Clear strategic aspect to this, but do you think there's also an economic aspect to Wang Yi's visit?
The China relationship phase as defined by two major changes. The first change, of course, is the Afghanistan is now taken over by the Taliban. And the Taliban, of course, is, still remains a patriot state, not regarded as a normal state, most of the countries around the world, because of its history of terrorism and conflicts in that region. And of course, with the wars, United States waging war on Afghanistan, with years of devastation, not only by the Americans, but also by Russia before the Americans came. And so the whole country was in shambles and required a major reconstruction. The second dynamic, of course, is the whole world order. The whole geopolitics has been changed by Trump's unilateralism and bullying against both friends and allies, but also China and Russia and so on. So I think that against this background, the relationship between China and Africa is now defined on three major issues. The first issue, of course, is the China's geostrategic flagship project, the Belt and Road Initiative. And if you look at the map, Afghanistan straddles at a very important crossroad between China's interior, the western provinces, and Central Asia. And so linking Afghanistan formally with the Belt and Road Initiative, building infrastructure, which of course in the process would help the Afghan economy, is top of the agenda. And secondly, as corollary to this, is the exploitation of the mineral resources in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is very rich in lithium, iron, and copper. And of course, lithium is the key mineral for batteries and defining the green revolution, electric cars and other green products. So I think that as part of the Belt and Road Initiative and the closer partnership between the Afghan government and the Beijing, it's exploitation of minerals for the benefits of the Afghan economy and of course for China. The third dimension is the Taliban's traditional connection with the East Turkestan independent movement, which of course rocked the stability of the China's Xinjiang province. And for a long time, this has been used as a China bashing card. But I think that the Taliban government still retains connections with the Eastern Turkestan independence movement, but in the light of the importance of forming a closer relationship with China, and I think the Taliban would be playing down the Eastern Turkestan connection and pivoting towards a closer, more friendly, and more cooperative and more accommodating relationship with Beijing.
All right, sir. Due to paucity of time, I must thank you for joining us on the broadcast. Of course, it remains to be seen how exactly is this indicative of regional power dynamics changing as well. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting our focus to some fresh news that is coming in from Karachi. An explosion at a fireworks warehouse in Pakistan's southern port city of Karachi has left at least 34 people injured. The blast occurred in a firecracker warehouse located within a building in the densely populated Sadr area of the metropolis. You can see flames and smoke billowing from the site and nearby streets littered with shattered glass in videos that are now being shown on your screens. The intensity of the blast was so severe that it was reportedly heard several kilometers away, and you can clearly see the rubble, the sheer impact upon the site over there. Meanwhile, rescue officials have confirmed that the fire was extinguished after several hours of firefighting. The cause of the blast still remains unclear. Meanwhile, Sindh Home Minister Zia-ul Hasan Lanjar has sought a detailed report from the police with respect to this particular incident. He's also directed the police to verify whether the warehouse owners had a valid license to store fireworks or not. Shifting focus away from Pakistan towards Europe, we are learning that the director of Spain's Civil Protection, Virginia Barcones, has stated that there's a decrease in the number of wildfires in the country. She's further stated that this indicates a positive trend and that weather conditions are now favorable as well. Let's listen in to what she said.
Ven, respecto a ayer ha habido un descenso en cuanto al número de incendios activos, lo que nos indica una tendencia favorable, pero se mantiene la activación de la unidad militar de emergencias en pero con la atención especialmente puesta en estos 8 que tienen una evolución más lenta o más adversa, como veremos a continuación.
Earlier, French firefighters worked alongside their counterparts from the Spanish Military Emergency Unit to set a perimeter and control of wildfire in the Corporals in the Spanish province of Leon. The firefighters carried large hoses to refresh the unburnt areas next to the black scorched earth. The blazes have nonetheless burned through nearly the same area in the past 24 hours as in all of last year itself. The Spanish army has deployed 3,400 troops and 50 aircrafts to help firefighters. Meanwhile, the Czech Republic, Finland, France, Germany, Netherlands and Slovakia have sent hundreds of firefighters, vehicles and aircrafts. Well, viewers, that's all we have for now. Stay tuned for more on NewsX World.